Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings and welcome back to Chapter 5 What Everybody is Saying, an ex FBI Agent's Guide to Speed Reading People by Joe Navarro. We left off last at Restriction of Arm Movement, and this is part 2, resuming Restriction of Arm Movement. Restriction of arm movements, arm freeze, particularly when it occurs in children, can sometimes have more sinister implications. In studying indicators of child abuse, it has been my experience that these children will restrict their arm movements in the presence of abusive parents or other predators. This makes perfect survival sense since all animals, especially predators, orient toward movement. Instinctively, the abused child learns that the more he moves, the more likely he is to be noticed and then potentially targeted by an abuser. I want to interject here. When I originally tried recording this, I was getting feedback on the playback, and that's been plaguing my other videos. But what Mr. Navarro is unintentionally drawing attention to is the just the rampant abuse that boys are suffering, and boys, U18, under 18, are suffering, whether it's in society, in school, workplaces, wherever. There is rampant abuse going on from all factors. You have that nut job out of Ohio, Emily Nutley, who most likely made a behind the scenes probation deal with Judge Jennifer or Jenny from the bench Branch and whoever the female prosecutor is. You know, we'll find out June 10, 2025. And bottom line, if it's probation, all three of them need to be rounded up and taken care of. This is out of control. But turning back to this is very important. I mean, boys and girls, no one should be marginalized. But because the fact everything is, our girls, federal titty 9 program, as I mock people about their obsession with Title 9. It's boys are forgotten, and it's probably just coincidental because the time that he wrote this, I believe, was 2012, maybe even earlier than that, 2008. To be as needed in 2025 with the out of control abuse towards boys that's being normalized, it's very, very important to fixate on identifying these actions, or limited actions rather, that they will be exhibiting if they're being abused. So the child's limbic system instinctively self-regulates to make sure his arms do not attract attention. Arm freeze behavior can serve to warn caring adults, whether teachers, yeah, right, teachers are raping the students. You're a fool to trust any education, not just public. Private too has got their issues because that Ohio woman, Emily Nutley, was at a private all boys school. Neighbors, relatives, or friends that a child might be the victim of abuse. All right, box insert number 28. Guardians all. For exercise, I swim regularly at a local pool. Years ago, I became aware of a young girl who, while normally gregarious and outgoing, would restrain her arms whenever her mother was around. I noticed this response on several different days. In addition, I noted that the mother frequently spoke to this young girl using stern, caustic, and demeaning words. In the physical interactions I witnessed, she often handled her daughter roughly rather than lovingly, which was very unsettling, but not to the degree of being criminal. On the final day that I saw the girl, I noticed some bruises just above her elbows on the ventral side of her arms, the part of the arm that faces the torso when the arm is hanging normally at the side. At this point, I could no longer keep my suspicions to myself. I notified members of the pool staff that I suspected child abuse and asked them to please keep an eye on the little girl. An employee told me she was a special needs child, and the bruises might be caused by her lack of coordination. I sensed that the gravity of my uneasiness wasn't registering, so I went to the director of the facility and expressed my concerns. I explained that defense wounds from falling do not manifest on the ventral side of the upper arms, but rather on the elbows or dorsal side, meaning outside of the arms. Also, I knew it was not coincidence that this child looked like an automaton every time her mother came near. All right, what he's saying with an automaton is the no light in the eyes. You know, the concept that people see a spark of life, a spark of divinity, a spark of humanity in somebody's eyes, a sense of being alive. And when they're dull, that is that automaton look, just in case you need a clarification. I was relieved to learn that this matter was later referred to authorities after others at the swim facility made the same observations. Let me make a very important point. If you are a parent, teacher, camp counselor, school resource officer, and you see children severely change or restrain their arm behavior around their parents or other adults, at a minimum, it should arouse your interest and promote further observation. Cessation of arm movement is part of the limbic system's freeze response. To the abused child, this adaptive behavior can mean survival. And to further illustrate what I was saying about U18 boys, this is another unintentional parallel to what's going on in our society, and that is the just outright, outright disgusting, ignorant, intentional ignoring of abuse of women. I mean, women have always had, the excuses. Oh, it's postpartum. Oh, it's Munchausen by proxy. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. It's not really her fault. No, it's her fault. We've got equal rights. There is no single right that a man possesses that a woman doesn't possess. They have fully functioning mental faculties, and they are doing it with premeditation. This abuse that he just alluded to in box 28, and Emily Nutley, or Angela Baramova, or Melody Johnson. It's all intentional. Don't for a minute believe the sob story or the fake crocodile tears. You're around women long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They will turn on the waterworks to an unsuspecting, quote unquote, authority figure to elicit sympathy. All right, back to the book. Maybe I just can't get the FBI out of me, but when I see children at a playground, I can't help but glance at their arms to note any bruises or injuries. Sadly, there is so much child abuse in the world, and during my training, I was instructed to look for the signs of neglect and abuse in children and others. Not only as a result of my career in law enforcement, but also from my years as a father. I know what falling or bumping bruises look like and where they occur on the body. Bruises received through abuse are not the same. Their locations and appearance are different, and these differences can be detected by the trained eye. Going back to the arm on box inset 28 that he was describing, think about it this: if you are facing directly your victim and you were to grab their upper arms, and the intense pressure that you put on the arms, where are the fingertip pressure points going to be? They're going to be on the inside of those upper arms or the forearm, if but in order to control the arms flailing, you can most likely put it, just above the elbow, maybe at the elbow. But that's where the pressure point is going to be, at the soft tissue on the inside. Keep those things in mind. Write notes. What is it that would indicate abuse? What is it that would indicate being a victim of abuse? If you write these things out and you start exploring the body language signals and the telltale physical manifestations or physiological manifestations that are displayed, whether it's bruises, reddening, um, torn clothing even, you're going to be able to start putting together a puzzle piece as to what it is that the person is telling you, if it is in congruence with what the signals are telling you. And that is what's going to keep you from chasing after fairy tales rather than the facts. And it's what you want. This is the whole point. We're in chapter 5, is to help develop tools to recognize the facts, so we're not wasting time and losing our actual subject. As previously stated, humans use their arms to defend themselves, a predictable limbic reaction. Because children use their arms to block their bodies as their primary means of defense, adults may use objects. A flailing arm is often the first thing an abusive parent will grab. Parents who aggressively seize children in this way will leave pressure marks on the ventral side, the inside of the arms, especially if the parent shakes the child in this position. The marks will be deeper in color from greater pressure and have the larger shape of the adult hand or the elongated shape of the thumb or fingers. All right, another segue. In one of the Sherlock Holmes stories, Conan Doyle describes a victim of what is perceived to be strangulation. Oh, it was done by somebody with, by their hands, because look at this. This is the fingers digging into the neck. And it turned out not to be. It was a beaded necklace or something to that effect, but essentially something that had evenly spaced and evenly sized uh, marble, whatever those things are called, baubles for the necklace. Uh, be aware that there are things that you're looking for. I was always told in the combat aspect of military training, there are no natural circles in nature. Now, of course, somebody's gonna be like, yes, there is. But bottom line, that's why you have the old movies with people putting, you know, foliage into their combat helmet and such to help break up the silhouette. In modern society, you're looking for things that, there's that saying, one of these things is not like the other. Well, when you have evenly spaced and evenly sized imprints, you don't have that in nature. Things are not static in their display. They're going to be varied. Be aware of these things. Write notes about it and look to what you experience. And it goes back to what I've said in previous videos about Janine Driver's body language training, where you sit and record yourself so you can even see these things for yourself and look around, experiment with it. One thing that I encountered years ago, which I found just absolutely stunning and absurd, is people will physically attack themselves. Think Fight Club, Edward Norton's character punching himself, you know, because he thinks that he's talking to Tyler Durden, Brad Pitt's character. But everybody's coming out of the bar watching this man sitting on the curb passing a drink back and forth between himself and an invisible man, and then all of a sudden starts wailing on himself. Um, yeah, you don't have to go to that extreme to identify what kind of markers and indicators you're going to have, but do think about it. Think about it in the next step as to what it takes to look like. What is it that somebody looks like when they're stunned? Look at the action units. The videos that I've incorporated the action units in that, or the METT training videos into, that measure surprise or fear, and learn to measure what it is that's being activated. Learn to identify the muscles that are or are not present in those emotional displays, and go beyond just the obvious of fear and surprise and expand it beyond the 7 universals into everything else. While physicians and public safety officers routinely see marks such as this on young victims or patients, many of us are just not aware of their prevalence or significance. If we all learn to observe children carefully and look for the obvious signs of maltreatment, we can all help to protect innocent children. And saying this, I am not trying to make you paranoid or unreasonably suspicious, just aware. The more knowledge all caring adults are about the appearance of defense wounds and other abusive injuries in children, and the more we observe for such injuries, the safer our children will be. We want them to be happy and swing their arms with joy, not restrain them in fear. Okay, I keep throwing in these anecdotes. Bottom line is, not everybody has the $5 to $1,000 to spend on these classes. They're not always that expensive. Sometimes it's only $200. But a lot of local law enforcement offices will offer training on this, and it's usually done for other law enforcement agencies to send, you know, officers for retraining, to keep their skills fresh, not because it's remedial, but to keep up with the newest information, and new officers who need to be educated rapidly to be able to identify this in the field. Where I live, it's very rural, so officers are put in the field on their own without training wheels after, I think the city assistant city manager told me, after 18 months of various degrees of training. It's their TR, their, I think he called it a TRO, training resource officer. Anyway, they do this training, and it goes for a period of time with the deputies for the county and a neighboring town's police department and our town's police department. And over the course of 18 months, they slowly pull the training wheels off. But it may be like at least 9 months to 18 months. But think about it this way: the amount of information, the volume of body language information and signals of deception or stress that people just take for granted that they're having to incorporate and learn, in addition to recognizing, well, for Oregon, it's RCWs, revised code of Washington. Oregon, it's Oregon revised statutes. Each place has its own variations, but all of uh, those local ordinances, those local laws that have to be known so they know how to write a proper citation, or if whether or not they can be involved, for civil versus criminal. So you can take these classes, and it's not so much heavy on the statutes as it is on actual body language, or whatever the class happens to be. I've taken a few of them myself. A crime scene, a few crime scene investigation classes, the body language classes, and yeah, I hold my own very well in those. With, and I think that goes without saying because this is a passionate hobby of mine. All right, restricted arm behavior is not limited to children. It can also be seen in adults for a variety of reasons. A friend of mine who was a customs inspector in Yuma, Arizona, told me that one of the things he noticed at the border was how people carried their handbags and purses when they came into the country. A person who was worried about the contents of her handbag, whether because of their value or their illegality. Oh my gosh, I never thought that word would be hard to pronounce. Illegality tended to be tended to hold onto the bag tighter, especially as she neared the customs desk. Not only do important items tend to be better protected with the arms, but also those things we do not want noticed. Um, Think kangaroo. You know how mother kangaroos have the pouches and they put the joey in the pouch to protect it? Think of the woman carrying the travel bag or the purse and having contents that she is very, very paranoid about protecting, and how the elbows are pulled in tight to the torso, forearms are death gripping that item and pulling it into the torso. I was going to put in a suggestion that if you are ever interested in art, to take up painting, take up drawing, and to find books that do caricature work. So if you're learning to sketch, learning to draw with a freehand with pencils, or specifically, ink, if you want to, if you don't, if you're not going to make mistakes, I make plenty of them. They will give you various faces, body images, facial images of various emotional states. And animation is, especially with adults, is very much disregarded, and the pronounced, the amplified signs of deception, lying, betrayal that they project. And look to those elements in animation and see if you can pick up on what the artist is intending to convey and see if it's an exaggerated form of things that have already been covered in this series, the first 4 chapters that we've already covered in this chapter, as well as the other videos about the behavioral table of elements and the related microexpression training and action unit training. Uh, and I would strongly encourage people to do it because it will help develop the other part of your brain to help you input more information to be able to more accurately detail what it is you're observing. But learning to draw, learning to paint, and to transmit those emotional displays is going to help you identify these areas. And that's my own personal opinion. That's something that I do on my side time. And box insert number 29, box insert 29, shoplifters tell. One of my earliest experiences with restrained arm behavior occurred more than 35 years ago at a bookstore where I was employed to spot shoplifters. From a lofty perch above the sales floor, I soon learned that these lawbreakers were relatively easy to spot. Once I understood the typical body language of shoplifters, I could identify them daily, surprisingly, even as they walked in the door. First, these individuals tended to look around a lot. Second, they tended to use fewer arm movements than regular shoppers. It was as though they were trying to make themselves smaller targets as they moved about the store. However, their lack of arm movements actually made them stand out more prominently and essentially allowed me to better focus on them as they went about their larcenous ways. All right. And in closing, we're going to come back to using arm cues to assess for mood or feelings. The more you practice this, the more this is going to start jumping out at you as neon signs in a black and white. What's his Miller, the graphic artist Miller. What's his name? Um, Frank Miller from Sin City and Batman, the one where he comes out of the Dark Knight Returns, and of course 300. The the way that they took the two of those, 300 and Sin City, and converted them from comic books into film, using unique ways of highlighting the texture, the colors, the vibrancy. Specifically, Sin City with the black and white backgrounds with the color bursts. That's kind of how this stuff is going to start impacting you the more you practice these skills and master them individually. All right. So this is part 2. We're going to come back with part 3, using arm cues to assess for mood or feelings.